Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises to manage clients and projects with max efficiency, sharing Wix's SEO tech to help you drive growth.
Fix errors, waste, and issues in a couple of clicks. Get alerted whenever you're off track. Sign up at trueclicks.com.
So hello everyone. Wow, it's a lot of people here. And it's very exciting to be here on the stage. And before I begin, I would like to thank the Brighton team and to all of you brave souls who have come up to listen to my first ever public speaking gig today. So yeah, I'm here to talk a little bit about some, like Matt mentioned, about some nerdy stuff that I used to do before, and eventually I had a transition from the old school Excel to BigQuery. And I promise you this will be the last of my slide with my photo. I will not show you myself again. So yeah, today I've come up here to talk about a little bit about the BigQuery part. And before, my experience was mostly working in small to medium sized agencies. You know, when you are in agencies, you are working on small to medium sized websites, sites that have, a couple of thousands of pages, which were relatively easy to manage in Excel. But I remember back in those days, wearing those noise cancelling earphones around me were like really important for other people because they were getting really annoyed by all those typing sounds I was making. But yeah, eventually I moved to Sweden, I think somewhere in 2018, and I started to work for an enterprise side in a client side role. And that's when actually I started to struggle managing the massive data sets in Excel. But can anybody guess which massive website I'm talking about here now? Can anybody guess? Yeah, so it's actually a place where you can find anything for your home, but you always end up spending your whole day and buying things that you don't need actually. So I'm basically talking about IKEA here now. A business operating actually multiple languages in many different countries. And, they have like more than 2 million pages. So it was more realistic to manage those data sets that I used to manage in Excel or Google Sheets before. Whereas working on IKEA.com, it became like a real double trouble for me because on one side I was struggling to adapt to the Swedish weather, and on one side I started to struggle with my work as well. And that's when the truth hit me. Actually, I started to look beyond those Excel and sheet stuff, and eventually I ended up finding BigQuery. And during that period, I kind of, deviated a little bit from Excel. Meanwhile, I also started to, get myself familiar with some Python stuff, just to, do some data sanity checks on those massive data sets. And the funny story is I remember mentioning this to one of my former colleagues, and her immediate reaction was if I was referring to the snake actually. But no, I'm not talking about the snake. I am referring to the programming language here now. So all that eventually led me to BigQuery because I wanted to store all those massive data sets somewhere where there's no possibility of any crash, And all that eventually took me to SQL, which is like a language we use to manipulate data in BigQuery. Today, I'll just be mainly talking about these two and leave Python maybe for some other day. Yeah, so it wasn't easy for me to do all this, but I hope when you will leave this room today, you will go with some knowledge and of course some inspiration with you. But don't get me wrong, you will still find me doing sometimes those nerdy things with Excel, and hopefully I will team up with Maths as well in the near future to do something more nerdy there. So going back to the BigQuery, how many of you have never heard or met BigQuery before? Can you raise your hands, please? I guess there are a few people who don't know BigQuery. Okay, no worries. So it's actually much friendlier than the name suggests. It's just a massive, infrastructure platform from Google where you can store all your massive data sets. And it's actually serverless and it's very cost efficient. It can act as a single source of truth for all your data needs. So if you have different sources, Facebook, Google Analytics, etc., you can pull data from all different sources into BigQuery and store it easily. So put this all into perspective. You can store up to petabytes of data in BigQuery. as compared to your local disk, where you will surprisingly have a lot of crashes with your data, or sometimes even with your system as well. But today I'll mainly be talking about the Google Search Console, which is a go-to tool for many of us here, and I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with the tool as well. And structured query language, if this is the first time you are hearing about it, no problem. It's also a very easy to learn language, which can be used to analyze and take valuable insights from your data that is stored in BigQuery. And people, so also Google, since we are talking about BigQuery here now, and it's Google's platform, Google also have Google SQL in place, but the old school SQL is still supported by Google. So people who have used actually the Google Search Console API to scrape data in the past, they could perhaps relate with this complex process of using their API with not enough documentation available to use the API. But things have become, much simpler, I guess, around the beginning of last year somewhere, where Google has started to offer native export into BigQuery from your Google Search Console data. And of course, on top of that, you can use SQL to take valuable SEO insights out of your massive data sets. Why we need it? I suppose everybody would agree with me that the data that is available in Search Console today, it's not sufficient to do anything actually. And it's also very manual. So you have to spend a lot of labor-intensive work to take anything out of the data. Having said that, I think it's very equally useful for small or even larger websites, because it gives you access to unlimited historical data sets, and it's very easy to learn. All you need is actually property owner rights for your Google Search Console property, and of course you know to set up your billing in BigQuery. And under your Google Search Console property settings, you can start the export to BigQuery in just a couple of clicks. It's very easy. But then the question is, how much does it actually cost? Because obviously Google is not going to give it for free, right? But don't worry, I think it's free to a level which actually is very helpful for you to learn and get your hands dirty with the data. Obviously, it's in the beginning, we all learn by making mistakes, so it's free for that kind of stuff, so you can definitely kickstart it. Quickly jumping into the console now for BigQuery. So don't get overwhelmed by looking at this. So what you see on the left side is actually the data sets and all the tables that you have stored there. And right on top, we have query editor, where you can write your SQL queries. And underneath the query editor, you will see the results for the queries stored in a table format, very much like Excel. But I would highly recommend that you actually get yourself familiar with your data before you jump into all this. Look into schemas, try to get familiar with column types, try to understand different data types that you have stored there. It's very important, because otherwise you will be costing a lot on your credit card on BigQuery. So without any further wait here now, let's jump into BigQuery. I still actually have a soft corner for IKEA, so I'm not going to share their data here. I will just be using public data sets that is offered by Google here. And I'll mainly be talking about some of the, some of the basic fundamental queries that you see here on the left, and then some like basic to intermediate kind of queries with some use cases that you can take with you and use it. So how many of you actually have never used this SQL before? Can anybody say it? Yeah, it's a lot of people. Okay, no worries. I will try to explain as simply as possible. So SQL is very much like going for shopping, right? So let's say you go to a bakery and you want to find chocolate chip cookies that are fresh and warmly baked. It's very much like this. So in SQL, you have select, where you select the cookies from a table, and actually you apply some sort of conditions, which is like fresh or warm or something. So when we interpret into SQL, we select one or multiple columns from a table where certain conditions are met. This is how simple it is. And this is what the basic syntax actually looks like. And you can see we have select on top from right here, and where, and we can see the value we have added here is organic search. So I guess those fundamental statements were maybe pretty too easy for you, but let's get down to some juicy stuff now. So what if we want to find multiple values in where clause? So let's say we have a scenario here now. We have column, we have a lot of different countries over there. What if we have a scenario if we want to filter out multiple values from the table, and that's where we use in keyword in SQL query with the values within the brackets. So this will help you to actually find out the values. You can also use multiple URLs here, because sometimes I understand you are working on specific set of URLs that you want to filter out. And you can see the results here that the filter has been applied now, and I can see the data only specific to those countries here now. The good thing is it works the other way around as well. All you have to do is add not before in, and it will basically sort out everything apart from these three values or any values that you will add here. You can also use between to find values between certain ranges. So let's say if you have scenario where you would like to find page views that are greater than 50 but they are less than 100. Basic skeleton of your query will stay exactly the same. We have select, we have from, where, and the only addition will be between here now. Moving on to the query, you can see we got everything else exactly the way it was before. And the only addition we have added is another conditional statement here to find values that are between 50 and 100. And you can see the results here in the column. We have got the threshold values here now based on the data that we filtered using between. Potential use cases, of course, you can check out average positions. You can find positions for keywords that are ranking, I don't know, maybe second to fifth position for low-hanging fruit. You can also filter out clicks. You can also look at impression data. So there are a lot of potential use cases for between. And then there are a bunch of aggregate functions. Actually, not bunch. I'm exaggerating here now. Only 3-4 different commonly used aggregate functions that can be used. And usually, aggregate functions are used with the group by keyword, which is another commonly used SQL keyword. Think of it like sorting out your socks in your drawer. Usually, you group them by color, by size, by brand. Think of it like that. So here we are using one of the aggregate function here, where we are summing up all the total page views and grouping them by a couple of different column names. The results are pretty clear here now that we have got the sum of all the countries that we defined in our previous slide here. So that's how it works. If you can combine count, you can combine group by, and you can use other aggregate functions with group by as well. But then here we have a twist here now. So where statements actually cannot be used with aggregate functions. So this is what I'm talking about here now. So if you want to say, let's say, give me the sum where, it's greater than 15 or something, it will not work. And that's where we have our next SQL keyword, which is quite powerful as well, is having. You can use this with aggregate functions. Looking at the query now, we have, got sum here. And the last threshold that you are defining here, you want to see or filter the data where the sum of page views is actually greater than 100. You can use obviously different values here or different kind of rules here, depending on your data needs or data set you have. The results are pretty much clear. You got the page views that are actually greater than 100 now. So there are a lot of potential use cases for this one, and some of them are my personal favorite as well. You can look into search volumes, you can do impression and click, you can also build a linking domain, you can export data from Majestic or any other tool. And the most interesting one is the keyword cannibalization actually. So you can find out maybe there are multiple pages ranking for the same keyword. You don't know, which is like a cannibalization going on. So now we will be going towards a bit more advanced topic here now. What if you want to find more specific patterns in your data? I understand we all have different kind of data sets. In your normal day-to-day life, you will spend time, exporting the data from Google Analytics, Google Search Console, spending time on filtering, cleaning, sorting, etc., which obviously is not very time efficient. And that's where we have very powerful query in SQL called like. which can actually be used to find URL patterns or even granular level keywords. And you can also use it to find specific country, depending on what kind of data you have in your data sets. And this is usually used with the wildcard operators, percentage and underscores. And you can obviously combine it with and or statement as well. So let's look at some of the use cases now. So we have a bunch of different, not bunch actually, it could be thousands of URLs because we are talking about BigQuery here. So we have thousands of URLs here now. We want to find specific URLs that contains men. It could be something else depending on what kind of data you have. So that's where we bring like in to the query, and you see I have wrapped around the string around the 2 percentage signs, which actually means give me anything that contains men's. And we got all the URLs that actually contains men. It's pretty much like the historic in the regex world. Another example is we have a lot of referrers here. I want to find a referrer that are coming from google.fr, and again I am using the same like, but this time I am not wrapping it with 2 percentage signs. I'm only starting it, which means give me anything that ends with fr. And we have got all the results from google.fr. And point to be noted here is that we have only used percentage sign here so far. There are a few other bunch of wildcards that you can obviously use in different possible combinations as well. And out of my curiosity, I asked ChatGPT how many possible combinations I can make with this. And I got this result actually, which actually I didn't get my head around this, but I suppose ChatGPT was telling me to just go away rather than asking such questions. Yes, so with so many possibilities of, it's like falling into the rabbit hole. But I guess that's enough for the like keyword here now. Moving on to the last one, which is one of my also favorite one. If anybody has used Excel with if and else kind of logics, so this one is for you. In SQL, case works pretty much like if and else logic works in Excel. So you put together everything where if the values are true, something is returned. If something is false, else is returned. And the last part is basically everything gets grouped in a separate column. Potential use cases, you can segregate data based on branded, non-branded keywords. You can look into folders, countries, etc., depending on what kind of data you have. Obviously, there are other use cases as well, and we can combine them with aggregate functions or even the like query that we just looked into before. Let's take a practical example now. So we again go back to the same list of URLs. This time we will be grouping or segregating data based on 2 different groups, men and keywords. And we'll be using a combination of case and like, where case will actually help us to define the if and else logic, and like will help us to find those URL patterns. Without going too much into the query, you can see the query. Feel free to take a picture if you want to take. I will be sharing slides as well later on. We got the results. We got a separate column here now where we got 2 different groups, men and kids group. Let's take it one step further now. What if we want to find organic revenue for men's and kids now? So the skeleton of your query would be like this. We'll be using a combination of everything now basically that we have discussed. We'll be using select case from where group. And this is what your query would actually look like. Yeah, I understand it can be a bit complicated to understand. But this is what the end result will look like. So obviously you can take a lot of valuable insights for your data and you can pitch it to different stakeholders that you are working with in just, by just writing those queries. And it could obviously possibly not be understood in just, 10-15 minutes of demo. So I completely understand that maybe some people are still a bit overwhelmed with all of this. So I would highly recommend you to check out this beginner talk by Arinj. I think she has done a fantastic job there. And also there are a couple of other people that I sometimes follow. They are also doing some really great work in BigQuery. And last but not least, BigQuery has started to offer this AI support as well. So all you have to do is type your prompt and the query will be written. But if you are still, keen to learn BigQuery and SQL, there are some resources available which you can use. And obviously, there are tons of other possibilities. You can build a backlink profile. If your website is like IKEA-sized website, you have thousands, millions of backlinks. You can build an internal linking engine, actually. and you can do server logs. Actually, on server logs, there is a very interesting talk tomorrow. One of our colleagues will be talking about server log data. So if you are still more interested in the topic, feel free to be there. Maybe you will find me there as well. So just to quickly recap, we went through select, from, where, and we went through some of the queries here as well. And obviously, due to the time limitations, we were not able to cover all the queries. There are a lot more interesting queries here now. And having said that, I think if you are interested in these slides, feel free to ping me on social media or just drop me a line on my email. And yeah, thank you for being here so far. I think even if you were here just for the cookies, I guess, but there are no cookies anyway. Thank you.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.